Assalamu alaikum everyone, I am Shefar Zara. I hope you all are safe and fine. Today our topic of discussion is northern blotting. So what is northern blotting? Northern blotting is basically a technique that is used to study gene expression by detection of RNA in sample, or you can define it as a method that is used to detect specific RNA molecules among a mixture of RNA, and it is also used to analyze a sample to measure the RNA expression of particular genes. Northern blotting, it was first developed by Alvine in 1977. You can pronounce it as Alvine and Alvine, both are correct. Principles of northern blotting. So there are basically two principles, that is electrophoresis and the capillary action. So electrophoresis, it separates RNA on the basis of their molecular weight and the type in the agarose gel, which has the ETBR, an intercalating agent in it. The second is the capillary action, and the RNA bands, they move towards the blotting paper by capillary movement, and they entrap in the sheet and the buffer move ahead. So these are basically the two principles of the northern blotting. Now let's discuss the steps that are involved in northern blotting. So the first step is RNA isolation, then the separation of RNA using gen electrophoresis. The third is blotting. The fourth is hybridization and washing of excess probes. The fifth is visualization, and the last is the northern. It is not a step, but the northern blotting procedure, it is quite similar to the southern blot, and except that the difference is that the biomaterial used is here it is RNA, whereas in southern blotting it is DNA. So these are the steps of the northern blotting that we will be discussing in detail in the successive slides. So here is a diagram, a diagrammatic representation of the entire process of northern blotting, and you can see the sample, and we have extracted the RNA and then done the electrophoresis, and through electrophoresis RNA is separated by size, and then the northern blotting is done, means the transfer of RNA to the membrane. After that the RNA, it is fixed to the membrane with UV or heat, and later on they are labeled with the probes, and these means the membrane hybridized with the labeled probes. It is hybridized with the labeled probes, and lastly these are visualized, means the labeled RNA that were labeled with the probes, they are visualized on the X-ray film. So this is how the entire process of northern blotting functions. So the first step is RNA isolation, and RNA, it is isolated from the cell, and basically all the protocols and techniques and the commercially available kits that are used to isolate RNA, they have common attributes, and these common attributes are that first they do is cellular lysis and the membrane disruption in order to release the RNA from the cell. The second is the inhibition of ribonuclease activity. So what is ribonuclease? Ribonuclease is actually a type of nuclease that catalyzes the degradation of RNA into smaller components. So this is the ribonuclease. The third is deproteinization. Deproteinization, is that it is basically the act, or you can say the process of removing proteins, as the name indicates. The fourth common attribute is the recovery of the intact RNA. So this is the common attributes of all the kits and protocols and the techniques that are used for the isolation of RNA. So what are the methods of the RNA extraction? So the first method is RNA isolation by acid guanidinium thiocyanate phenylchloroform extraction, and the principle of this method is that RNA is separated from DNA after extraction with an acidic solution, means the RNA extraction with acidic solution is done, and this acidic solution, it contains guanidinium thiocyanate, sodium acetate, phenol, and the chloroform. The names are written in the slide, you can see. And after that, the under acidic condition, total RNA, it remains in the upper aqueous phase, while the most of the DNA and the proteins, it remains in the lower organic phase. So this RNA and the DNA, they separates, and the total RNA, it is then recovered by the precipitation with isopropanol, and it can be used for several applications. So this is one of the method of the RNA extraction. The second method is the RNA isolation by column-based technology, and the principle of this technique is that the nucleic acid, what it will do is that it will bind to the solid phase of silica under certain conditions, and a buffer solution along with the sample and the ethanol or isopropanol. What it do is that it forms a binding solution, and this binding solution, so the binding composition of binding solution is basically the buffer solution plus sample plus ethanol or propanol. You can isopropanol, you can use either ethanol or either isopropanol. So it forms the binding solution, and this binding solution, it is transferred to the spin column, and the column is kept in the centrifuge. And what centrifuge do is that the centrifuge forces the binding solution through a silica gel membrane, and this silica gel membrane it is present inside the spin column. So the nucleic acid, it will bind to the silica gel membrane, and you can separate it later on. So this is the process by which the RNA is isolated by column-based technology. So once the RNA is isolated, the next step is the quality assessment of the total RNA. So in order to assess the quality of the RNA, two methods that are used, that are nanodrop technology or bioanalyzer. And there are three quality controls that are performed on isolated RNA. The first is via nanodrop. So in this, what is that? The quantity of RNA, it is measured in ng per microliter. Here ng basically it is the abbreviation of nanogram. So nanogram per microliter, it will be the quantity of the RNA, it will be measured in this. Then the purity of RNA, how it will be measured is that the ratio of the absorbance at 260 and 280 nanometer is used in order to assess the RNA purity of an RNA preparation. And so the pure RNA, if there is the pure RNA is pure, it will have and 260 to 280, 260 per 280, either 260 or 280 of range, 1.8 to 2.0. So absorbance, pure RNA will basically show the absorbance at 260 or 280. The third is integrity of the RNA. It can be measured by the bioanalyzer. So it is basically, in the diagram you can see the nanodrop, it is the equipment, and it looks like this. Now let's see that what is bioanalyzer and how it functions. So bioanalyzer, it performs capillary electrophoresis, and it uses a fluorescent dye that binds to RNA to determine both RNA concentration and integrity. And it is recommended to use at least 50 nanogram per microliter for a meaningful RNA integrity number, that is RIN. So RNA stands for RNA integrity number. And this RIN means it is basically an algorithm for assigning integrity values to RNA measurements. And because the integrity of RNA is a major concern for genetic expression studies, so that's why it is considered. So the RNA integrity number software algorithm, it allows the classification of total RNA based on numbering system from 1 to 10. And here 1 means that it is most degraded, and 10 means that it is the most intact. So this is the RIN integrity, means RNA integrity number. And for suppose if RNA of 5, RIN number is 5, it might not work for the microarray experiment, but it might work for the PCR experiment. So it depends, it changes. So this was the bioanalyzer and the RNA integrity number. So once the RNA samples they are isolated, the next step is denaturing agarose gel electrophoresis, and the types of gel that are used are agarose for DNA and RNA, and the source of this agarose is seaweed. The other type of gel that is used is polyacrylamide gel, that is for protein, and last is starch, that is also protein. So what should be the gel conditions? First of all, denaturing gels, they disrupt the natural structure of DNA and RNA and causing it to unfold in the linear chain. Thus, the mobility of each macromolecule, it depends on its linear length and its mass to charge ratio. And the secondary, tertiary and quaternary levels of the biomolecular structure, they are disrupted, and leaving only the primary structure is left behind to be analyzed. So this denaturing gels, what they do is that they disrupt the secondary, tertiary and quaternary structures level of the biomolecular structure, and leaving behind the primary structures that can be used for the analysis. Last is the nucleic acid that are denatured by urea or formaldehyde in the buffer. They means that nucleic acid, they are denatured by using the urea formaldehyde in the buffer, while the proteins, they are natured using the sodium dodecyl sulfate. So this was the denaturing gel. The next type of gel is the native gels, and these native gels, they are denaturing conditions. So basically we are studying the gels, like what are the different types of gels. So this native, we have discussed the denaturing gels with denatures, while this native gel, they are non-denaturing conditions, and so that the analyte natural structure is maintained. And in northern blotting, formaldehyde, it has been used as the denaturant traditionally during the electrophoresis step. And formaldehyde agarose gel electrophoresis is normally used in the separation of RNA. As formaldehyde agarose gel, it prevents RNA from folding on itself. So that's why this formaldehyde agarose gel electrophoresis is used. But there is a disadvantage of using this formaldehyde. The first is that it is need to be poured and run gels in a fume hood. And on electrophoresis, RNA molecules, they move towards positive pole as RNA is negatively charged. So this is the gel, basically, that what type of gels perform what functions. So here you can see the entire setup of the agarose gel electrophoresis, and how you can see that the strands, they are separated on the basis of their molecular weights, and they are being shown how this entire setup is attached to the power supply, and when the current is being passed and the power supply is being, and sample is applied to the gel, so how it works. So it is the entire setup of the agarose gel electrophoresis. The third step in northern blotting is the blotting step, and simply blotting is a process of transferring the RNA molecules to the nitrocellulose membrane or nylon membrane. So it is basically the blotting step. And the choice of membrane, if we say that what membrane should we use, so there are several types of commercially available membranes that are suitable for RNA analysis, and these membranes, they are composed of different materials and they carry different charges. The common ones are made up of nylon and nitrocellulose, and they may be neutral, negatively or positively charged. Nylon, that is the polyamide membranes, they are made of the most durable material, but what happens is that they can shrink or they can wrap if exposed to the organic solvents. Whereas I have told you that for blotting purpose, either nitrocellulose membrane will be used, or the nylon membrane will be used. So nylon membrane I have told you, and nitrocellulose, what it do that it tends to tear easily in washing steps and becomes very fragile. There I have told you that membranes can be neutral, negatively or positively charged. So the negative membranes, they give the cleanest background, but they result in poor specific signals. Positively charged membranes, they give the best signals of all, but they can also result in higher background. And many scientists feel that nylon is better since it binds more and is less fragile. So nylon is preferable for this blotting step, nylon membrane. So once the RNA is separated, by the denaturing agarose gel electrophoresis, the RNA is transferred to the positively charged nylon membrane and immobilized for subsequent hybridization. And for the fast reproducible transfer, the iBlot dry blotting system is used, and this iBlot blotting system, it offers complete transfer of RNA to nylon membrane that within the short time, that is 7 minutes. So in 7 minutes, this iBlot dry blotting system will completely transfer the RNA to the nylon membrane. But whereas there is another thing is that this with dry blotting there is no need for additional buffer or liquids that can introduce variability in the results. So you don't need to add additional buffers, and because if you will add the additional buffer, then it will also alter your results. And what is the if you say that what is the advantages of this system is that it has high detention sensitivity, increased blotting reliability and reproducibility, whereas the flexible gel size formats and the membrane types are, and the high quality of results are being produced. Here in the diagram you can see the iBlot dry blotting system. It is how it looks like. So here in the diagram on the left hand side you can see the nylon membranes. So these actually they look like this, and in the left side you can see that the transfer, you can say the blot of RNA fragments from gel to nylon membranes are being shown. So that lower one is gel, that blue one, and from there the RNA fragments, they are being transferred to the nylon membranes. The fourth step is stabilization. Once the RNA it has been transferred to the membrane, it is immobilized through covalent linkage to the membrane by two methods. So this immobilization is basically done by two methods. The first is UV cross linking and the second is baking. So what is UV cross linking? UV cross linking is one of the most popular methods, and it is either uses either a handheld UV lamp at the short wavelength or a commercial cross linking device. So the short wave UV light, what it do is that it causes the uracil base to become highly reactive, because we are dealing with the RNA. So in RNA uracil is present, you know very well, instead of thymine. So what it do is that it causes the uracil base to become highly reactive, and when the uracil will become highly reactive, it will form a covalent linkage to amine group on the surface of the membrane. Amine group will be present on the surface of the membrane, and so the uracil will form the covalent linkage with it. On the other hand, the auto cross link feature is available on the commercially available kits, and the calibrated instruments are being present, and if for example calibrated instruments they are not available, it is possible to use standard laboratory equipment, and this standard laboratory equipment can be trans illuminators and handheld UV lamps. And why we need is that to fix the target RNA targets to the membrane, as I have shown you in the previous one diagram. During this process, care must be taken, and so that not to overexpose or to underexpose the RNA to the UV light, because if you will overexpose or underexpose the RNA to the UV light, it will cause decreased hybridization signals. Usually 1 minute exposure with the 254 nanometer light, it is suitable for this purpose. The other common method we will discuss in the next slide. So the other common method for this purpose is the baking of the membrane in an oven at 80 degrees Celsius, and baking works by heating the membrane, and as a result of this heating, all the water that solubilize the RNA, it drives out, and a large component of RNA, it is basically the hydrophobic nucleotide bases. And what these hydrophobic nucleotide bases do is that it makes hydrophobic contacts with aromatic groups on the membrane. So on the membrane you have aromatic groups, whereas in the RNA you have excess amount of hydrophobic nucleotides. So these hydrophobic nucleotides, they make the bonding with these aromatic groups. So this interaction which I have told you is being created between the hydrophobic nucleotides and the aromatic groups. It is affected by heating in an oven at 80 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes. But there is a danger in baking is that, only danger in baking is that the membrane, it can get damaged because of the temperature, because if the heat is not regulated to prevent temperature from rising, so if the temperature for suppose it reaches to 100 degrees Celsius, so it will damage the membrane. So it is only the advantage of this baking technique. Then next you need is the probes. Probes for Northern blotting, they are composed of nucleic acid with the complementary sequence to all, or you can say a part of the RNA of interest. These probes can be DNA, RNA or oligonucleotides with a minimum of 25 complementary bases to the target sequence. Commonly, complementary DNA, it is created with label primers for the RNA sequences of interest, and so that it can act as a probe in the northern blot. And the probe, they must be labeled either with radioactive isotopes, and these radioactive isotopes can be either P32, P33 or S35. And this radiative labeling, what it do is that it provides the most sensitive method for detection. And or first is radiative labeling. Second, you can what do is chemiluminescence, in which alkaline phosphatase or the horseridase peroxidase (HRP), it breaks down the chemiluminescent substrate, producing a detectable emission of light. The chemiluminescent labeling, it can occur in two ways. Either the probe is attached to the enzyme, or the probe is labeled with the ligand. That, for example, if you say that ligand is biotin, so it will be labeled with the ligand. So this is the two steps how this chemiluminescent labeling is done. And later on, the X-ray film, it can detect both the radiative and chemiluminescent signals. And chemiluminescent signals, they are faster, they are more sensitive, and they reduce the health hazards as compared to radiative, because radiative, you know, is highly dangerous for the health. So it is better to use this chemiluminescent labeling. So what are the disadvantages of P32 means the detection with the radiative label probe? So the first disadvantage is that it has short half-life, about of 2 weeks, which means that the probe, they must be used immediately, and the labeling reagent cannot be stored for a long period of time. The second is the contamination problems, because all the materials and equipments, because you know in the lab and other experiments are also being performed, but for this purpose all the materials and equipments, they must be dedicated only to the radiative work. So regular lab wide testing for contamination is required in this purpose, in this technique. The third one is that you also need access to a dark room to set up and develop films. And the fourth is that you should also need to spend money, or you can say for dispose of the radioactive waste, because you know that radioactive waste is like deadly, and if someone comes in contact with it, then the consequences are really quite like horrible consequences. So you have to discard these radioactive elements with much care. So these are the disadvantages. Then you have non-radiative detection systems are also present. These are colorimetric, fluorescent and chemiluminescent. Chemiluminescent we have discussed. We will discuss the other two in the successive slides. So what is this colorimetric detection? Colorimetric detection generally involves the production of color precipitate, and which can be seen with the naked eye. And in a typical system, the DNA probe itself, it is labeled with an antigen such as digioxygenin, and after hybridization to its target, it would be exposed to anti-digioxygenin. First we will label it with the antigen digioxygenin, and then with the anti-digioxygenin antibody. And this anti-digioxygenin antibody, it is conjugated to an enzyme that is capable of catalyzing a colorimetric reaction. The second method that we will discuss is the fluorescent detection. Fluorescent detection involves probes which are directly labeled with fluorophores, or directly or indirectly labeled there. For example, if the probe is labeled with biotin, it would be exposed to avidin or streptavidin fluorescent tag, and the when it will be like when these you can say this labeled or probe labeled are exposed to the fluorescent tag, what will happen is that fluorophore will emit light at an appropriate wavelength. So this is how this fluorescent detection works, and this emission of the light, it is being detected by the X-rays method. The fifth step in this process in northern blotting is the hybridization and washing of the assessed probes. So hybridization, is done with radioactive labeled or fluorescently labeled probes. Hybridization process, what it includes is that we incubate membrane with labeled RNA probe with target sequence. Probe could be labeled with P32, biotins, or streptavidin probe. Probes for northern blotting, they are composed of nucleic acid with the complementary sequence to all parts of the RNA of interest. And we have discussed this before. They can be DNA, RNA, or oligonucleotides with a minimum of 25 complementary bases to the target sequence. And the probe must be labeled either with the radioactive isotopes, that is P32, or with the chemiluminescence. We have discussed this before. Hybridization between probes and the target RNA takes place, and then we do is that we wash the assessed probes. The last step is the visualization, and for this purpose autoradiography is being used, and we place membrane over X-ray film, and X-ray film, it darkens where the fragments are complementary to the radioactive probes. So this is how we visualize this process. So here in the diagram, it is basically the summary of the entire northern blotting process. So first step is DNA is cleaved, and if I summarize it, so the first step is DNA is cleaved. Electrophoresis is used to separate DNA, and you can see the gel and the size markers are being shown, and the DNA section fragments are also used for many that the individual bands run together. And the gen electrophoresis, I have shown you that how it looks like, the entire setup. The next step is that DNA fragments are blotted onto the nitrocellulose filter, or you can say the membrane. So I have shown you that how that membrane is being like it looks like. And the third is the filter is exposed to the radioactive probe. We have seen that. And the probe, what it do is that it hybridizes with the homologous DNA fragments, still not visible it is. And the last is that the filter is exposed to the photographic film, and photographic film is developed. And this X-ray film, you can see it is being marked in the last step, and the bands of the X-ray film created by the label probes. So the label probe creates the bands. So this is the entire process of northern blotting. So here you can see basically it is a diagrammatic representation of how the bands are visible and not visible. So the if I summarize it, is just basically that first RNA separation, because we are dealing with the northern blotting. So RNA separation is done by gel electrophoresis. Then RNA blot on nylon membrane, or I have told you that nitrocellulose membrane is also used, but more preferable is nylon membrane. Then the incubation is done with the radioactive probes. Still you can see in the third diagram, that is in the last one, middle one, still the fragments are not visible. Then the probe binds to the specific DNA or RNA sequences. And lastly, when we see on the X-ray film, the probe detection on X-ray film is being seen, and we can see that how the bands have darkened. So this is how it works. So after discussing the procedure and entire steps of the northern blotting, the question arises that what are the applications of northern blotting? So the first application is that northern blots are particularly useful for determining the specific genes and that are being expressed at the messenger RNA level. The second is it allows one to observe a particular gene expression patterns between tissues, organs, you can say developmental stages, pathogen infections, and over the course of treatment we can detect. And thirdly, the technique it has been used to show overexpression of oncogenes and the downregulation of tumor suppressor genes in the cancerous cells when compared to the normal tissue. One overexpression, others downregulation, and as well as the gene expression in the rejection of transplanted organs. So this is why the northern blotting application is useful. So this was the entire process of northern blotting. I hope you have understood this all and what we have discussed so far. And if you want to study this material which I have discussed in this lecture in the written form, then you can visit these slides which I have mentioned here. Thank you for watching. Allah Hafiz.